Hello and welcome back to Polytoots. Today we are going to be making fire, this fire to be precise. And there's a couple of other little things sort of happening here, like with the light sort of changing colors and moving, so the shadows are kind of doing crazy things. And also on the sort of the logs and things, there's this sort of animated emissive thing happening. This isn't a shader tutorial, but I will be including the shaders and the materials and basically all of the resources that you'll need to follow along, except for the treasure chests and this floor material. So aside from that, and the skybox, you can make this skybox yourself. Honestly, it's easy. So yeah, aside from those things, you'll be given everything to kind of get started. But before we hop in, we'll just show you a little bit about sort of how this is kind of built. The most important thing, and I'll probably discuss everything else while I'm actually doing the tutorial, but it's the reason as to why I'm using a wind zone. And there's a very good reason that I like using wind zones when it comes to fires. And basically it's that they are... Oh, wait a minute, get my script off. It's essentially that they are animatable. And I will show you sort of why that would prove to be a handy thing. I mean, for starters, you could have just sort of like a random animation of it sort of looping around where the fire will, it will try to follow it, which just kind of makes for, things a little bit more interesting in your environment. But you can also kind of control like the strength of it and whatnot. So if you wanted some sort of animation where someone does something and the fire just kind of goes crazy and then just returns a bit back to normal, then yeah, you can do this without having to mess with any of the particle stuff itself. It's just, you just move this wherever you want it to be. So yeah, that's why I use the wind zone, basically. We will just take a quick look at the shaders. Again, these are included and they were built using Amplify, but if you can't be bothered to get the package or whatever, then I will at least show you kind of what's happening here. It's extremely simple. So this is for the logs and things. It's basically just an animated emissive. I won't explain any of this. Again, this is not a shader tutorial, so you can have a look at the nodes. And that'll be that. The only other shader that I include is this. I call it a HDR particle in that for the Embers. Using a default particle, I couldn't really get them to be like bright. They just seem to really be faded. And so I did create just a little shader. I don't yet know if it was actually worth it or not, but either way, I did make that. And again, this one's incredibly simple. I just do a couple of gradients to create a circle, and I use that as my texture. The only thing worth noting, if you would ever make particle shaders, if you want to be able to change the color in the particle itself, you need to like attach a vertex color node somewhere. Otherwise, changing the color like here on the particle, it won't have any effect. So anyway, I have rambled on. I'm sure most of you already skipped off. But yeah, we're going to go and start making this right now. Alright, so the first thing that we're probably going to want to do is get some nice sort of mood lighting in here. So I think I already have a different skybox. Right, skybox. This is just it's just a procedural Unity one. You don't need anything special for this. Just change the colors. So yeah, it's not something that I really need to provide because it's very easy to kind of just set up. This is probably going to want to come down a fair bit. Not sure about colors or anything yet. We'll kind of get to that in a bit, but Yeah, nice and dark. Always makes sense to have fire in the dark. I don't know why you would have fire in the middle of the day, but I mean, it happens. So yeah, we're just going to get right to it. We're going to begin with like the base sort of fire effect. And if you are trying to sort of follow along like with sort of each value that I'm putting in, it could be a little bit tricky. You might want to wait until I'm finished, because the thing with particles is you tend to tweak them like a fair bit. You know, like changing one thing means changing something else. So yeah, let's make sure this is roughly centered. I think my fire is, yeah, it's in the root, so that should probably be 0, 0. I'll leave the Z though, because not sure where it's going to be placed just yet. Yeah, my typical sort of workflow when it comes to particles is just split into sort of two categories really. One is the behavior and the other one is the visuals, which, I mean, it sounds obvious, I know, but what happens usually is if I can't get one looking right, then I will focus on the other, and then things tend to sort of fall in place. So for now, we're just going to focus on the actual sort of behavior of this. So we're not going to put in our sort of material yet, or any of the colors. We're just going to kind of try to get these particles behaving the way that we want. Probably a pretty low speed to begin with, because we're eventually going to sort of add force and whatnot, and an external force as well. So that'll do for now. So let's sort of just skip right into 3D wind zone. This is it's a bit of a cheat really, to get fire particles, because you kind of want it to start out wide on the bottom and then come up to a point, and it's kind of just an easy way to get it to do that. So let's see. Yeah, particle systems, make sure that the external forces is enabled, and right now nothing's really happening. One of the annoying things about these sort of wind zones is you can't change them and then sort of preview that change in real time, as it were. So if I were to see how the particles are acting now, and then I come over here, obviously the particles are paused because we haven't got them selected. So if I change this, I don't see what's happening. But one sort of easy way around that is just to go into play mode, and probably don't want maximize on play. So yeah, if you go into play mode, now you can kind of just tweak this however you see fit. Something like that will do for now. Probably end up tweaking it later. So I'll come down to about here, and then all you want to do is right click on its transform, copy component, because when you come out of play mode, any changes you make are basically reverted. So if you come out of play mode, the wind zone will go back, but because we copied the components, we can now just paste them back in. And if I play this, actually it looks a bit different to where I left it off, but that'll do. So let's give this a bit of lift. You can either do this with velocity over lifetime. If I change this to world, and then increase the Y, so then we can increase its you know, how much it moves, or you can use the force over lifetime. And I'll stick with something like that for now. Okay, let's chuck in a bit of noise. Not that much noise, maybe 0.2. Something like that. And the emission count, gonna want to bump this up. At the moment, you can see down here it's emitting 15 particles, which isn't that many. I mean, you do want to keep the number down, you know, to a reasonable rate, but for the main sort of base of the fire, I'll probably go to about 50 or so, maybe more. And if that's a bit confusing because I said 50 but I put in 40, I'm aiming for the number down here, so the actual sort of particle spawned. Okay, so that's changed that behavior ever so slightly, but we'll work on the finer details as we kind of keep building it up. So I'm going to try and adjust my wind zone again. Yeah, no, that's pretty good behavior. You can see it kind of coming up through, and then it comes to this point. So wind zone, copy this, paste component values. Now we are probably still going to have to keep tweaking this because there's still other things to do. So let's change the size of a lifetime because we do want the flames to get smaller as they go up, and you know, as you can see already, it's almost like we need more particles, but we'll just we'll make sure they're slightly bigger for longer. Something like that. And then let's see, what else can we do? Probably just maybe increase the start size. Something like that. So, I mean, it was just a sort of a quick job, but you know, as far as fire behavior goes, it's kind of okay. So now let's hop over to the visual side of it, and we will be using material that is provided with the package in the description of the video. Can't remember what I called it. Fire sheet, I guess. Obviously it looks incredibly wrong. Oh, if you're wondering, I mean, you know, how to make these sort of things, for this particular example, I was just using Filter Forge. You know, it's cheap, it's easy, so yeah, that's essentially how I made that. If I'm up for the editing task, hopefully I'll have something on screen that will just show you Filter Forge, but otherwise, look it up. It's pretty good. It's one of those things that's it's always on sale. For some reason, like, don't believe the lies on the website where they say, you know, like 1 day left, because it'll be on sale tomorrow as well, and the day after that, and the day after that. But anyway, this is a texture sheet animator, so we do want to do something like this. I can't remember how many I was using. It wasn't 8x8, 5x5. Okay. It's a good start, but could be better, as always. So let's just keep tweaking around with some stuff. The rotation, we'll make that as a random. I always tend to put, oh, not that much. I always put 0 to 350, only because 0 to 360, two of those values would be the same. So I'm sure that it doesn't matter at all, but that's what I do with that. Start size, we can also kind of begin to randomize this stuff. Maybe we have some slightly bigger. That's going okay. It's a bit flickery. The texture sheet animator, I'll increase the cycles. Maybe this will work, or it'll just make it a lot worse. May have made it worse, so I'll put that back to 1. Essentially, the cycles is how many times it loops through the animation in its lifetime. So let's have another play with this wind zone. You know, I'm pretty okay with that. Maybe I think the fire itself is moving like way too fast, so let's tone that down. They did introduce this simulation speed, which is just the best thing ever, because before, trying to sort of like speed up or slow down particles and keep them the exact same way that you already had them was just a nightmare. So very, very cool little feature. Let's go with maybe 0.6. Maybe it's too slow. 0.7. Yeah, something like that maybe. Let's see if we can make this just a bit more interesting. So we'll get the color of a lifetime. We're already getting color from the texture, but just as a bit of a test, kind of want to see what this would do. Might be a bit too much. But no, it's okay. Let's also try and give it a bit more force. Slightly overkill, but who doesn't like a giant fire? I do think it's looking kind of weak. There we go. So yeah, the material just wasn't set right. I'll leave this at full for now, so then we can control it on the actual particle itself. Something like that. I just realized, I mean, I haven't really been explaining anything that I've just been doing. I guess I kind of assume that it's all a bit self-explanatory. So I apologize if none of this kind of makes sense to you, but I don't know, just kind of keep playing around with it. You'll eventually kind of figure out what does what. Yeah, I mean, if you have any questions about what the hell it is I'm doing, then by all means let me know. So yeah, there's that, and we're going to get away from particles for now because the flame that we have doesn't really match the scene, so we're going to get in a light and we'll zero these out. Oh, I just realized before with the particle I was saying on the Z should be 0. Okay, anyway. So sorry, yeah, the light, it's going to be pretty intense, and the color should mimic that of our fire, although that's kind of yellowy, so let's bring it to sort of an orange. Maybe more intense, maybe that's too intense. Let's get the shadows on. And yeah, that looks better. Okay, so we have that. So now we're going to move on to the smoke. So let me just name this base fire. And then I'm going to duplicate this whole thing, but I'll remove the wind zone because we kind of want the same effect to happen with the smoke. And so for starters, what we'll just do is we'll swap out the material. And again, this is one that should be provided in the package. I think it's, yeah, it should be this one. We're not using a texture sheet animator. And let's bump up the force. Color of a lifetime, we definitely don't want it to start off yellow. We do want it to alpha out. I'm going to get rid of external forces as well, so it's not being controlled by the wind zone. and it's really difficult to see. So either it's just sort of invisible or it's just dying off before it reaches the top. So I mean, you can see it in there, but I want it to come up further than the actual flame. So we'll keep kind of messing around with this. Something like that. And I might actually move the emitter itself up so that it starts a little higher. And then let's just reduce it a lot. Because we want the smoke to be there, but we don't want it to be, you know, like in your face, sort of obvious. We can bring the emission of these down a bit, but just increase their size. Since they're quite opaque. Opaque? No, transparent. You can just make them bigger, but reduce the actual emit amount, which always helps. I'm just trying to bring it in a bit. I think still a bit too much. I think it's clouding the actual fire here, so let's see what we can do about that. Yeah, a bit of a shame. I want it to be kind of big when it gets to the top, but not so big. Potentially. Yeah, and I mean, I am dragging that alpha way down because don't want too much smoke. Maybe make it slightly, not slower, should be faster, I think. Maybe just a 0.8. Yeah, I mean, that'll do for now. It's a bit weird sort of to record while I'm doing this. Like, my mind kind of just goes blank, but yeah, we'll move on to the embers next. So floaty thingies. We'll just create a whole new system for that. So effects, particle system, embers. And definitely don't want embers like that. So let's change. Actually, we'll keep the shape as a cone, same as the other two. This is going to take a little bit of sort of tweaking to get right. We definitely want the start size to be very small. And we do want it to be fast, but also not to just fly out, you know? So maybe we can give it some gravity. We're also going to throw in a noise, so see how that looks. Get the lifetime down to say 3. Start speed. Yeah, a bit of a tricky one. Okay, let's throw in the noise and then we'll see what this will do. That's okay, they just last a little too long. And then size over lifetime, because we do want them to shrink down. Still going a bit all over the place, and they're a bit quick, so let's slow them down a bit. Let's bring them in actually, so they're not shooting out too far. That's pretty nice. I'll keep the initial emit rate down, say something like 5, so I want it to sort of continuously spit them out, but every now and again it will spit out a whole bunch. So let's say 15, and then like I don't know, like 6 seconds later or something, it'll do 30, or maybe that's a bit too much. It's okay actually, but bring it down anyway. And for these, it's not possible to get the default particle to be sort of HDR, like to respond to the bloom, you know, to glow. So I did just make a quick particle material, which again is included. So we'll be using this one, and then we'll just change the color. Seems a bit too big now. So we're 0.005. Too small. Okay, it kind of works. So you get the embers sort of, you know, continuously kind of coming out, and then every now and again there'll be just this little burst, which is pretty cool. Let's see if there's anything else that we need to do with the particles before moving on to sorting out general sort of effects. I mean, I guess we could always continue to randomize these embers a little bit. So they do have a gravity modifier at the moment, but we'll give that a random between two constants. What does 1 do? That might shoot them through. Might be a bit too much. So let's say 0.3 to 0.6. And the start speed will also say 2 to 4. Sorry, 2 to 5. Yeah, no, that's good enough. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for, oh, didn't name this, smoke. It's pretty much it for the particles themselves, but there's still a lot that you can do to kind of boost the scenes. So I'll show you one thing kind of to never do, really, but unless you've just got like an isolated scene and you don't have to worry about things being too expensive. But if we just throw in a reflection probe, we'll set it to real time and every frame, and if we stick this like inside the fire, let's put box projection, no, it doesn't matter. And so now I think when we play the game, no, I've done something wrong, or it's not quite in the right place. Okay, so the effect isn't quite as strong as I thought it was. You can see it a bit here, where anything that's sort of reflective and shiny will obviously be receiving reflections from this probe. And so if you kind of stick it inside this fire, then you get these kind of real-time fire flickers, which is pretty nice. I was expecting the effect to be a bit bigger. I guess, okay, you can kind of see it on the floor here. Perhaps if I were to, like if you had a really sort of shiny floor, then yeah, I mean, it's a bit overkill, but yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, so it's expensive, very expensive. I don't recommend it. One easier way to do this is actually just to animate the light that you already have. We're going to do a couple of things to this light. So we're going to start off with just hitting Control 6, or if you go up to Window and Animation with the point light selected at least, then you'll get this window and you'll basically ask you to create a clip. So we will do that, and we'll stick this in animations. I already have one here, but I'll just create a new one. Firelight tutorial. And now we can just start animating it. And it doesn't need to be anything crazy, like, so we'll do up to 1 second. And if you just hit this record mode, let's move this a bit. Let's change its range a tiny bit and its intensity maybe a lot. So now we have these sort of start and end frames. So we just want to select all of these start frames, copy them, come over to here and paste them. So now we know that the start and the end frames are always going to be the same, which means we can do whatever we want in between. So let's just begin with the actual movement of it. So it'll just be kind of jittering sort of up and down. You can even move it sort of left and right, back and forth, you know, just trying to sort of emulate however a fire would react to light. I think I've said that wrong. How fire would react to light, how shadow would react to fire's light. Yeah, again, it's very difficult to record and speak at the same time. So something like that. So if we hit play, you can see it doing that, which looks like a light that's on ecstasy, but it'll be okay. So now we'll do the range and intensity. So we'll just essentially randomly kind of keep changing these a bit, sort of in every frame. I tend not to go too far one way or the other. It's like a value or two. You can kind of see it going nuts. And this, similar to the reflection probe and having sort of an effect on the environment, this is just a much sort of cheaper way to fake that. So we can close this window. And let's hit play, see kind of what everything looks like. It's okay. I mean, that fire is insane. But one pretty cool thing is with the wind zone that we have. So if we were to just kind of get this up out of the way a bit, you can decrease that so it's not as crazy. And again, this is a thing that you can animate. So if you start moving it around, the fire will change. So yeah, something worth playing with for sure. I do think my fire is a little bit strong. Let's see if we can bring the alpha down on that. Actually, one thing that I will do, my embers, they're not really glowy enough for me. So if we stick on, let's say, like a bright yellow, perhaps we can get that to boost up a bit. Potentially, it might just be the same. Oh, there is one other little thing I forgot actually. With the embers, we change them to a stretched billboard, and now they'll actually kind of like, as they move, they'll have some length to them, which really kind of adds to the effect. Yeah, so I mean, unless I'm forgetting something, which is incredibly likely, that pretty much wraps it up. There isn't much else to cover, I think. You know, like how you kind of want this to look can change just with messing around with these settings. You know, you don't have to basically stick to what I've done. You can just mess around with whatever it is that you want. Get some magic fire if you want. Yeah, that is about it. Sorry for the sort of the spaced out speaking. It's really weird to kind of think about, you know, like all of these different particle settings and also kind of talk you through it while I'm making it. But it is what it is. So yeah, I hope you learned something at least. And if you didn't, then let me know, because I'm doing something wrong. But yeah, thank you for watching. At some point I will release a video of essentially the creation process of this fire pit. It'll probably be a speed video thing. What do we call them? Time lapses. Time lapses, yeah. Just because it would be a massively long video if I just released that. And it's only a little sort of campfire, so, you know, like 2.5 hours of footage is just it's a little too much. So I'll probably just be doing a speed thing for that. It'll be using 3D Code, 3ds Max, Photoshop, and maybe Unity. I can't remember. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.